him on what he feels and the process so far. We certainly will come back to you on that. Now, Yuri, the point there is just 6 persons voting so far. One would say that is not encouraging yet, although it's just starting, so we cannot make conclusions yet.
It's just starting. We can't make conclusions yet. But what if it was said that those, those positions, those polling centers, that okay, so we're going to start, handing out, the $5,000 to those people who are right, and we're opening at 8:30. Do you not think that from 7 o'clock
we would have seen a long queue?
That place will be jammed and there will be a long queue. So I suspect that maybe what's happening is that people in their minds are saying that, okay, the initial rush, they don't think themselves, let other people go and then I'll come later. And everybody's thinking like that. And then what then happens is we have the situation where, well, they were ready on time here, but only 6-7 people have voted so far. Well, it'll pick up, but was Nifemi saying that voting will continue until around 2:30?
Yes, 2:30 is the closing time.
Yes.
However, if you are on the queue, you'll be allowed to vote even up until 6 p.m. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
But new persons will not be joining the queue anything after 2:30
anymore. And in relation to the question of those people, I think like Nifemi guessed, and you even alluded to, I think most of that is the entourage of the president-elect. There'll be entourage, there'll be, supporters, family, everybody. In fact, I don't know, I didn't see, Mrs. Oluremi Tinubu in there yet.
Exactly.
But she was right next to him, last week.
Exactly.
Last time.
Yeah, the last time at the presidential election.
Yes. So, so far, so good. I guess we're starting off slowly, but I am a bit apprehensive because of what happened on the presidential election, where we were actually collating with phone phone touches. But, the Nasarawa commissioner that we spoke with and who was sort of being representative of the others, all those things have been addressed. It won't happen like that again. Well, we hope so, but we just see how it picks up, because it's a bit worrying that in spite of INEC's determination, something still happened to prevent them being there. There was places where, as you said, 8 o'clock they were there, but we would have wanted to hear more reports of that kind of an incident where INEC was there at 7:30. I don't know why INEC, if it was necessary, couldn't have left their base even before it was daylight. Maybe security, which is another thing that you've been talking about.
Exactly.
The security is good, it's tight. And the interesting question you asked, Nifemi, whether could it sort of give you a sort of distribution of the people so far?
Yes.
It would be interesting to see, are they, men, are they women, are they youths, men,
the aged?
Yes, the aged, that kind of a thing. But we're all observing it. So far, we're just.
I think because I recall when you spoke with the Resident Electoral Commissioner of Nasarawa State yesterday on your program, and when we spoke with our correspondent in Nasarawa, there seemed to be a very good mobilization and coordination in Nasarawa State. We saw, in fact, compared to all of the places we've crossed over today, Nasarawa seemed to be one of the places we saw a large turnout of people so far. The electoral materials and personnel and officials came ahead of time, about an hour ahead of time.
Exactly.
So it's a good story from Nasarawa State.
As I recall, his name is Alhaji Othman. He was emphatic that, look, when I was probing, he was even slightly irritated as I was probing more.
I've told you everything. What else do you want me to say?
As I've just said, these things are all well in hand.
Amazing.
And they have been addressed. And from what you're saying and what actually happened, it is the case in Nasarawa, but we need to see how it goes all over the country, because it's going to be a very, very busy day. It's a much bigger election than the presidential. Doja was telling us there that there are 18 governorship aspirants, and there are, 40 assembly, hopefuls in there.
Yeah.
That's going to take some time.
Exactly.
But INEC is up to the task. I think we still want to keep
yes.
that.
In some of the states where some of the parties are not fielding candidates, it makes it a little easier. We've seen in some states where some political parties had collapsed their apparatus or their network or structure for others.
That's right.
So it makes it a little easier.
It happened in Lagos too. Did it happen elsewhere?
No, of course, it happened in Adamawa State, it happened in Taraba State, it happened in Benue State, and some other states. But in a state like Abia, for instance, all the political parties have candidates, and they're all going out to vote today. So it's going to be a busy day sorting all of those things, because in the eyes of the law, all the candidates and all the parties are equal. You have to give time to counting everybody's, giving attention to everybody's votes, you tally them like that. So it takes a longer process to collate things like that.
Indeed it does, and another key thing in this regard is going to be the training that the staff gets, because so that they can do all those things in a timely manner and in a thoroughly professional manner. I just want to, give INEC the humongous benefit of the doubt and say that it's going to be different now. They'll pull it off. Indications right now is that so far so good.
Yes.
It's coming along a bit. It's coming along well, but Nifemi promised us that they're trying to grab hold of the president-elect.
Yes, he will be speaking anytime from now to journalists, as is expected.
Maybe after he's voted or before, whatever.
No,
probably
it's
after.
Usually after the vote.
Yeah, so we, hold up
of course, we expect him to speak to journalists, and we'll be crossing over to him to get the message from him regarding what he feels about the process so far and so on. At times like this, we get to hear maybe some of the, in his capacity as president-elect, he could make some kind of statements that make headlines the next day, especially regarding the plans that he has. For right now, we understand that there's a lot of lobbying going on from reports we hear, him putting his would-be cabinet together and all of that. One can only imagine that it's going to be a great task.
Indeed. And adding Philip to that, you recall that President Muhammadu Buhari, the sitting president, he has signed some, documents interesting bills into law.
Yeah.
And among one of the ones that, in fact, just about every one of about a handful of them, the fact that any president-elect has 6 months in which to, put out his list. I found that interesting. Was it?
No, it's 60 days.
60 days, I beg your pardon.
60 days.
60 days. You must come up with it in 60 days,
Exactly.
not 6 months. And you know that he himself didn't quite, make that particular amount.
I guess it's his own way of saying I'm repenting.
So people are speculating. It'll be good. Well, he won't give much away. I feel relatively sure, because that's how they do. All those big guys, all these president-elects. He's not going to give very much away. He can't, not there, I would guess. Yeah. Many people are saying, so who is going to be what? Who is going to be the minister of what?
Exactly.
Who is going to be the chief of staff?
Yes.
He no doubt has a very clear idea of, how that might go.
Exactly.
But I guess in politics, right up until the last moment, the mind has not been made up.
Well, I was speaking with a senior advocate of Nigeria, Wahab Shitu, yesterday, and we asked him what key areas, when it comes to the ministries, what key area do you think that the president-elect should pay keen attention to, especially when it has to do with putting round pegs in round holes in those areas?
Which is another thing the president-elect said he is going to be particular about, giving the impression that it's not going to be business as usual.
Yes.
I'm going to emphasize competence, which is interesting. If he says he's going to emphasize competence, You know how there are so many political debts to discharge, and if it was the way it went before, people would say, look, I worked, and so I'm expectant, but we'll see how all of that will be sorted out with this whole
he said he'll be forming a government of national competence and not necessarily national government of national unity. He wants to be emphatic, lay emphasis on the competence and not necessarily unity.
Can't you do the two at one?
Well, of course, you can do
you
the
in
two.
one stroke
because
do the two?
The issue
just making sure that
you balance
where there are political debts. I'm sorry, I just have to go for the competent, the most competent one.
Yes.
So
no, of course, but there's a thin line somewhere when you're talking about competence. Now, you can find competence anywhere in the country. That's no doubt. Every part of this country have people who are competent here and there if you look for them. However, those persons you might consider most competent and you would want them on the cabinet, maybe they were not the political persons who helped you get to office. So it could be the issue of, all right, now this person who helped me, who was on ground, who was that grassroots person who had sleepless nights ensuring that we work together in the trenches to get here, may not necessarily be the kind of technocrat you might want on the cabinet.
Well, but the cabinet isn't the only. Those are not the only jobs to be filled.
No, of course.
Maybe there are also,
other ways,
similarly important, jobs to be had, and I think that's going to be. Playing on the mind of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in selecting his cabinet, that, look, there are all sorts of jobs, Yes, the cabinet is very, very important. Yes, we minister this and minister that, but there are also equally important jobs elsewhere. So that's because he spoke about it, that I am going to be putting together a government of competence. In fact, I think it is you that added not necessarily of national unity. Or did he? You added that, or did he actually add not necessarily?
No. Let me quote him directly, because that statement he made was in reaction to a party official saying that he should come up with a government of national unity, so that there can be some level of reconciliation and all of that. And he came out after that time, I think a day after, 24 hours later, to say, well, my focus is to come up with the government of national unity. Government of national competence.
Yes.
Because his emphasis and the vision he has for Nigeria is in the area of competence. So that was his statement. So I was just trying to paraphrase.
So in that connection, it's right to be in there if he was reacting to.
Yes, he was reacting to a statement earlier made. All right, we're getting visuals. Yeah. We're getting, this is a visual where the president-elect, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, voted. This were moments ago when he cast his ballot. The process was going on there. Right now, we understand he's almost through with that process, and it is expected that he will speak to journalists shortly. You can see them trying to get his thumbprint there on the Beavers machine, and everyone is following, seeing the process. From the reports we're getting, the Beavers are working so far. They're trying to get his facials there, and as it is part of the accreditation process.
And there's Mrs. Oluremi Tinubu. You know, I had said she was missing in the first shot. As she was there all the while.
No, she has always been there. I guess, yes. Okay, so that's the visual. Of course, when it's time for him to speak to journalists, we'll be crossing over there. Now, joining me in the studio too is Obani Akinwale. He is one of us monitoring the system, monitoring the process so far. And it's also good to have you this morning. Thanks for joining us. Now, I know you have, gotten feelers from the various places you have seen this morning and gone around to see. And I wonder what you make of arrival of material so far. And so
yeah, I casted my ballots around about 9:05 this morning, and the entire process took me about 1 minute 30 seconds. One thing that you not take away from these electoral processes, no matter how much you want to castigate the umpire or castigate the process,
yes,
it's been one of the technology savvy, and in terms of timeliness, in terms of how the technology has worked, when you talk about the three responsibility of the equipment, the beavers, which is enrollment, accreditation, and the uploading. In terms of enrollment, I think beavers has done itself a good job. In terms of accreditation this morning, it was seamless. We had my voting. The later part is what we'll be expecting. So far, so good. The environment is calm. The process is going on peacefully. There has not been any serious incidents of reporting of maybe the ballots failed or any as the election progresses. So far, so good. The democracy is still winning, so to say.
It's really interesting. All right, let's cross over to Celestine Area, our correspondent, joining us to give us updates of the situation so far. Celestina, it's good to have you join us back again. Can you give us situation reports where you are?
Okay, Mike. Voting has commenced. It started very early. We are very quick to start. The process is seamless. But we observed that the turnout, we have more women than men. The beavers are working, people are casting their ballots, and releasing. So far, so good. It's a very peaceful process. Security men are here to observe the process and ensure that everything goes on correctly.
All right. When we spoke to you earlier, or when you spoke to us earlier, people were still trickling out a little bit. What's the level of turnout now from what you're seeing?
It is a massive turnout.
All right. Our correspondent, Celestina Area, joining us all the way from Sokoto State, bringing us up to speed with the developments there. We spoke to her earlier, and she was there ahead of time. People were still trickling in a little bit, in bits, here and there, but from the visuals we saw just a moment ago, it seemed to be a long queue of people. All right, I think Celestina is back now. Celestina, go ahead. I was asking you about the turnout of people from what you have seen so far.
Massive turnout from what we but what we have more women than men. The queue waiting for their turn. And the process is very fast. And we are hoping that by 2:30 the process will be rounded up for sorting to commence. But so far so good. They turn out in their numbers. The process is peaceful, and the security men are on ground to ensure that nothing goes against what the INEC and what they have been told, to ensure that everybody has their ballots in a very peaceful and orderly manner.
All right. One other thing I observed from the visual I can see now is that there's a queue for women and then there's a queue for men, which is quite interesting. That's trying to be sensitive to the peculiarity. Really interesting. Talk to us about women. I'd like us to know, give us a sense of the level of turnout for women.
Okay, well, the queue, they have two queues. A queue for men and queue for women, because of the religion background of the state. So, and also preference is being given to the old, the elderly, and the pregnant women, because this preference was set by the INEC guidelines. But because of the religious background of the state, men and women are secured different. Because if you see through the queues, you notice that women are more than men. But so far, everybody has conducted themselves in a very orderly manner, and the credit officers have also commended the voters for their cooperation. And the beavers nation, I can say, from the polling we visited, are functioning very well.
All right, Celestina Ira, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. We will come back to you from time to time to get a sense of what's going on there. Our correspondent, Celestina, joining us from Sokoto State.